And hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am happy to be here with you today. I hope everyone is enjoying Sunday, and as always, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do our live stream with you, talking about the issues that matter. And of course, we're looking forward to hearing all of your comments on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, as long as the internet overlords are allowing us to broadcast, and to have you call in at 607-242-1582. We do look forward to that. So we're going to be talking about a lot of issues today. Obviously, the most important thing is, where is Joe Biden leading the United States? Where is America heading towards? Because we have a lot of executive orders going on. We have very little action from Congress. We have very troubling things happening overseas. And I say troubling because it's hard to be sure. But overall, it looks like America is on a path to do Obama 2.0. We've seen a lot of the actions by Joe Biden, the executive orders, not just reversing where President Trump had taken America, but to take us backwards in time. And that is a serious question. I mean, whether it's talking about the Syrian war, and whether it's talking about Iraq, whether it's talking about the U.S. economy, there are problems here, and they are becoming very self-evident. And we do have some comments, and give me 1 second. So Jesse has mentioned it's unbelievable, and he seems to agree that we're going in a very troubling direction. And I think I agree with you, Jesse. It really throws me off. Now, obviously, we may recall, and maybe some people don't, that at the end of the term for President Trump, we see that, and I want to be very clear, whether or not America is better off, are we better off than where we were 4 years ago? At the end of the first Obama term, and I'm only focusing on independents. Doesn't matter about the Republicans. I'm not looking at the Democrats. Let's look at what the independents believe. They're the least partisan group of everyone. And according to the independents, 60% believe that at the end of the Trump administration, America was better off than when we had President Obama. The independents believe that going from George Bush to Obama, only 46% were better off. Generally speaking, this is one of the strongest responses we have ever seen, and this comes from Gallup. Now, that makes a really interesting statement. America doesn't feel like it's better off. And I think that's true of most Americans. And one of the reasons why we see that, of course, is because, we even have Poland. The world is responding. We've had Germany, Poland, and many, many Americans saying, hey, social media is censoring people. We have less free speech. We see that in Germany. We know that as of today, there was just an announcement by Epoch Times that over 78,000 Americans or individuals have had their Facebook and their Twitter accounts removed. We know that we have seen the law enforcement Facebook page had 900,000 of their members blocked by Facebook. We know that, you're right, Jesse, Canada is now pissed off at the United States with good reason. We have unions that are upset. The list continues on, and we're only in day four of the Biden administration. How much worse can it get? Well, we're going to talk about that, because I think it gets a lot worse. So what can we say? We know that we've seen a lot of executive orders. In fact, there is a flood of executive orders coming from Joe Biden. In particular, on January 22nd, there were the executive orders from Joe Biden that addressed not only COVID-19, but also decided that there should be a $15 minimum wage. Now, those who've been with us on the channel before realize that a $15 minimum wage is something that will cause, according to the CBO, the Congressional Business Office, up to 3.5 million people to lose their jobs. We're talking about at least 1 million people who will have less hours at work than they had before. And that was from 2019. That's when the economy was good. Taking into account what's happened with COVID, where we've had over 25% of all businesses across the United States close permanently. We have another 50% of businesses reportedly looking at possibly closing in the next 6 months. And you're looking at increasing their net wages, something that we've seen done, an experiment we've seen done in Manhattan, where Manhattan wages were increased to $15 an hour. And what happened there is a 30% reduction in work, that workers were fired or had their hours cut because of the increase. And then, of course, consequentially, an increase in the cost of the foods and goods that these workers were responsible for, which hurt the people at the lowest income levels most of all. So we've seen that executive orders, and here's my big problem with this, and folks, tell me if I'm wrong here. Jesse, you can tell me if I'm wrong. When we look at what's going on, is it troubling to anyone that Joe Biden is making these changes without speaking to Congress, without talking to the American people, without getting any input or feedback, even from his own party? He's just going out there and doing things. He's just changing everything back to Obama 2.0. Does that disturb people? Now, Jesse mentions that people call you a conspiracy theorist if you believe these things. Well, these are facts. And yes, people are being called that by Facebook, by Twitter, by some on YouTube, and in the news media. But the fact is that this is the First Amendment. There is nothing wrong with being able to say, I don't agree. I didn't hear Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the news media saying that when people said, hey, burning down Minneapolis was a bad idea. The people that did that are criminals. I didn't hear them say, oh, well, you're a conspiracy theorist. Or if you supported it, oh, that's a conspiracy. No. What they said is, no, it was mostly peaceful. They said that you couldn't say that. That's racist, that's sexist. So to hear those same people say, well, to complain now, to say that Joe Biden isn't speaking to the American people, he's just wielding power, usurping Congress, quite honestly, they say, oh, well, that's just a conspiracy. How? What part of it's a conspiracy? What is it that I'm saying that's not factual? He, in fact, is changing the nation, changing the way our nation deals with other countries without speaking to anyone. He hasn't spoken to Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. They're agreeing after the fact with everything that he's doing, but he hasn't spoken to them. He hasn't spoken to the American people. What speech did he come out and say, hey, America, I want to cancel the XL pipeline, and I know that it's going to instantly end somewhere between 11 to 83,000 jobs directly, and indirectly countless thousands more. So, matter of fact, it's going to destroy the economy of New Mexico. Is that all right? And he didn't even explain, well, this is because of the eco-science, the eco-fanatics, and global warming. Did he explain that to anyone? Did he make that statement anywhere before he decided, I'm signing the pen? No, he just went out and did it. Now, Jesse mentions they don't care because it's not Trump. Sadly, yeah. You know, the media has been on... The majority of the news media has been so orange man bad. That's the only message they had. And they finally have someone who's not orange man bad that they have to go, oh, well, he's great. Oh, good. But let's actually think about this. We have to actually evaluate what, in fact, is he doing? I mean, the fact that he net increased the amount of unemployment in America, which will also increase the cost of gasoline and natural gas for heating in the middle of a winter, in the middle of a pandemic, as he has described it, doesn't seem to make a lot of business sense. It doesn't seem to make a lot of national security sense. Now, you can tell me you think I'm wrong. That's what this channel is for. This is the First Amendment. You can type in, you can call in and say, Mike, you just don't get it. And I'd like to hear that, because I've heard Canada has already responded and said that this has distanced the United States from Canada, that this has made our relations worse with one of our closest and most, not just physically close, but in terms of policy, one of our closest allies in Canada. And we just did something that hurt their economy, hurt our economy. And if you're talking about the global climate change, well, it's giving more oil to China, and China is the leading polluter in the world. So you just gave them more oil to pollute the world with more. So it doesn't make sense. Mavis mentions, I thought I was about to say the same thing. I've been pointing out the bad stuff that Biden has done, and all the leftists say, well, Trump was worse. Well, Trump wasn't worse. We had, other than a pandemic, and I'm not going to hold the pandemic against any one individual or country other than China, who didn't tell anyone about it until everyone else got it. But let's think about this. On day one, Joe Biden increased the net unemployment rate of the nation. Trump didn't do that. Joe Biden did this on his own, by his own power, or more power than he actually should have, without speaking to the American people. Trump has never done that. And you don't have to like President Trump. You could hate President Trump. You could have the worst case of Trump derangement syndrome possible. And you cannot compare that to anything that Joe Biden has done in less than 48 hours, because he didn't do that. And you can't blame this on COVID. It has nothing to do with COVID. This is about international politics. This is about energy. This is about the economy. And what Joe Biden has done is said, let's go back 4 years to the end of the Obama administration as if nothing has changed, like nothing in the world has happened. And let's just pick back up. And guess what? Back in 2016, we knew that Canada wanted the United States to have the oil. They wanted us to have their oil and natural gas. That's why there was the XL pipeline, and they needed it for both their economy and their employment levels. And Obama was against it then, and it was causing tension between Canada and America. I know many people, the news media, hope and pray. Many people, elected officials, hope and pray that people do not remember this, but these are facts. You can go back in time and see it. We reported it back then. It's not new. Jesse mentions people were so concerned with outing Trump, they didn't care who ran against him and what his policy was. And I agree. The whole message was orange man bad, not what are you going to do? In fact, it's one of the big things that I've been speaking about recently, because they were so worried about orange man bad, they didn't think of, hey, President Biden in day 2 of his being in charge decided to roll back decades of women's achievements and opportunity in sports just because he signed it, because he wanted to. So if you didn't catch this, Biden has enacted, in terms of transphobia and dealing with that he requires that anyone who's biologically a male is allowed to compete against women in women's sports. So that's track, that's wrestling, that's field hockey, that's gymnastics, you name it. Any sport that women are in. The WNBA, well, now men can play in that. Now, that's because if you didn't say yes to that, and if you disagree with that at all, well, then you're a transphobe. Because there's an ist and an ism for anything you might disagree with. But there are tons of women and women's organizations that are absolutely pissed off about this. Because when you compare the genetics of a male versus a female, you're going to see men tend to do better in most of, and when we're talking about equal, I'm not talking about me versus anybody. I'm a 50-year-old man who doesn't exercise. I'm sure there's plenty of women who can kick my butt left and right in their 20s. I'm not questioning that. But let's go pound for pound, age for age. If you're talking about an athlete, an Olympic level athlete, of a male and a female, they're not on the same level. The male in many of the physical pursuits are going to do better. That doesn't mean that women are bad. That doesn't mean that women aren't capable. It doesn't mean that they're not exceptional. It means that they're not the same. That is a basic fact of genetics and science. And it has been shown to be true in history, the existence of human beings. Now, it doesn't mean they're any less capable, but it does mean that when you interject, there's a reason why women have sports of their own, why they have their own athletes, their own their own mentors and individuals to look up to, because that's for them. That's their sport. That's their hero. And now we're going to subject that and transition that so that, any trans individual that wants to be in sports will dominate. And we have seen that it has already happened for the last, 3 years, 4 years? How many times have we seen in the newspaper that women have lost and records have been completely shattered because a trans woman broke every record that had been existent beforehand? And women have been upset. Women's groups have been upset. And Jesse has mentioned boxing. And yeah, I am terrified for the day that they let a trans woman get into boxing, female boxing, MMA, and let them go at it. Someone's going to be hurt. Someone's going to be seriously physically hurt. And again, we come to the same thought. And Biden did this on his own, without speaking to the American people, without speaking to Congress, without even making so much as a news press conference. He did not appear and say, this is what I'm going to do. He just did it. Tell me how that doesn't sound authoritarian. Tell me how that doesn't sound destructive, disrespectful. This is a problem. You don't have to agree with me. You may think it's absolutely fantastic to have trans women in women's sports. Fantastic. The fact that it was done without speaking to you, without asking you a question, it was done as an order. You must submit. It is something that he has willed into power, and you have no choice. You may agree with the outcome. Do you agree with the fact that you have no voice, that you have been nullified, that you are effectively a neo-peasant and he is a neo-noble? Because that is effectively what has happened. And that is something that's troubling. Wheels mentions, hey, Wheels. Wheels mentions, and by the way, hi, Mavis. Good to see you. Wheels says, look at Fallon Fox in MMA. She was hurting those women, causing concussions and shattering records. And again, I'm not going to say I'm not even taking the position that they should or should not be in there. Whether someone is trans and they want to be in another sport, that's not for me to say. I'm not even addressing that. I'm addressing the fact that you had no choice. You had no voice. Your opinion does not matter. And I know there are millions of parents out there with daughters who are going track and field, MMA, all of the different sports that women are involved in, and their daughters are phenomenal, and they are losing scholarships, and they are being kicked out of the sport, being set aside by this, and they had no voice in this. They didn't get the chance to even say, maybe we should rethink this. Maybe there should be stipulations on this. Maybe there should be guidelines on this. No, the answer is it's done. And you have no voice. This is what troubles me. This is the Biden America. You have no voice. He's doing it. You're going to live with it. It's done. That should terrify everyone. I don't care if you're Republican, conservative, Democrat, even progressives, libertarians, everyone should agree that a an elected official should never be running ramshod with a list of priorities that you don't know of, and he's just going to make it happen, and this is the law, and you have no choice. Whatever happened to the First Amendment, and whatever happened to the Declaration of Independence, that we have the right, the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That no longer exists when someone is telling you you're going to do this and that's all there is. And I'm not going to speak to you about it. I'm not going to listen to you about it. You're just going to do it. Jesse mentions, do as I say because that's what you should be doing. If you don't, you're xenophobic or homophobic or transphobic or some kind of ism and ist. Yeah, it's kind of like a dictator. And that troubles me because the media is more than happy than letting this happen. In fact, even our elected officials are more than happy to allow this to happen because what are they worried about? They're worried about trying to impeach President Trump, who's no longer in office, who transitioned power peacefully as it's supposed to happen. That's what that is the fact. You may disagree with what happened with the riots in D.C. Fantastic. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what happened on January 20th. January 20th, President Trump stepped down, and we had Joe Biden come into power. That was peaceful. It was a peaceful transition. Well, mostly peaceful transition. I'm going to get to that in 1 second. And what has our Congress done? This is the very same Congress that is since January. And I want to show you. This is H.R. 134. Okay? This is for the Congress to figure out if they should count illegal aliens and how they should remove seats. New York State, in particular, is going to be losing at least 2, possibly 3 members of Congress because everyone ran from this state like rats from a sinking ship. You know what? What does that bill actually do? I can't tell you. It was introduced on January 4th. January 4th. Today is January 24th. That was 20 days ago. We have no ideas in there what's going on because they have not published a single word. Because Representative Jackson Lee hasn't bothered to send out a written explanation of what she's trying to do. And therefore, you, the American people, have no idea what's going on. We are in the dark. Congress is not doing its job. They are doing everything but their job. And in the meantime, we hear the Senate and Nancy Pelosi saying, hey, guess what? We're going to work on impeachment, and we can do the impeachment and everything else too. Really? I'm showing you proof, real time. They can't even print up a description of a law they introduced 20 days ago. They are so busy trying to figure out impeachment. And you want me to believe that they're going to be able to help get out the COVID? They want to send out a $1,400 check. They want to try and invade in Syria. They want to improve the economy, lower unemployment. You can't write if you can't print a document on the internet, how am I supposed to believe you're going to get anything else done? Seriously, how can we believe that? And Jesse mentions they've done nothing, and this is all about making sure that President Trump can never run again. Yeah, it's all about politics. It's about politics. There is no excuse about that. This is solely and only about politics. By the way, I should mention, if this is the first time you've been on the program, we do long-form political commentary. And every time when we show you something on the screen, in the description in YouTube after the show, you will see links to everything that we have shown you so that you can listen to it and see it for yourself and make your own conclusion. We're not here to tell you what to believe, but we are here to ask the questions and, yes, sometimes also give our belief on what's the answer. But we want you to see that. So just in case it's the first time you're here, you have input. So yes, this is about, and it seems to be very clear. And to say that this is not about politics, Well, what does it do? President Trump is no longer in office, so it's not about what he's doing. That's what impeachment's for, to remove a president from office. He's not in office. What's the point? You want to censure him? That's an entirely different process. You want to say he was a bad guy? That's an entirely different process. But if you're saying, oh, but we want to impeach him, well, he has no power. Why are you impeaching him? He's not in the office. Why are you impeaching him? Oh, so he can't run again in 2024. We don't even know what's going to be happening in 2024. You don't even know that he wants to run. And even if he wants to run today, there's no way to say that in 4 years he's going to. He's 80. He'll be 84 by then. God forbid, he could pass away. So could Joe Biden, for that matter. So how do we even know? That means it is spite. It is pure political spite. Remember I mentioned Trump derangement syndrome? That's what it is. If you're worried about whether Trump's going to run or not, have someone who is good enough to beat him. If Biden is so good, if Kamala Harris is so good, then why do you care who's going to run? If it's not a problem and you have the right ideas and you have the best ideas, then it doesn't matter whether they run or not. America will stand by you and they will elect them. What you're telling me is you have no confidence. And this is, I think, something that's very important. It's saying that they have zero confidence in the ability of Biden and or Kamala Harris to do the job and to make America better or even keep it the same. They expect things to be worse. They expect American people to be worse off. And therefore, they're afraid of who may run against them in 4 years. And they're saying that with less than 4 days of these guys being in power. That's what they are saying. Now, if you think I'm wrong on that, if you think I've misunderstood that, if you think that doesn't make sense, please explain to me why they are so terrified about an ex-president and what that ex-president may do than worried about what this current guy is doing. I mean, that's the thing that makes sense to me. But to catch up on some of the comments, Ron, hello, Ron. It's good to see you there. Ron joins us and he says, what are your thoughts on Jom starting a new, about the starting of a new political party? Well, I don't know, because what does that party stand for? There's the big question. So if we're going to talk about political parties, are they standing for values that the other parties don't? Do they have an agenda that makes more sense? Are they more targeted? It's the same question about, well, there's the Libertarian Party. It's a third party. Nothing wrong with that. Having an additional political party is never bad for America. We have several. There's the Green Party. There's the Socialists, who generally have moved over into the Democratic Party and call themselves now Democratic Socialists, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But there's no problem with having, I think there's 50 different moderate to large political parties in the United States at this time. What's the problem? We have one more, so there'll be 51. And if they have an agenda that makes sense for the American people, and they have individuals who are in that party who reasonably look to be able to accomplish those agendas, then why not? Yeah, the Patriot Party. Why not? If they have an agenda that's going to help people, that helps to lower unemployment, helps to expand the ability of people who are poor to become middle class, if they are able to secure the nation and keep us safe from enemies overseas like Iran that are screaming every day for the death to America, not death to the Republicans, not death to conservatives, not death to libertarians. They say death to America. That includes Democrats and the Democratic Socialists. They want everyone who doesn't believe what they believe to die. And if someone is willing to stand up, and if they're from the Patriot Party or any other organization, and they're able to protect America and keep our quality of life and keep us able to move forward, then what's the problem? And anyone who says, well, you can't have a Patriot Party and that's a problem, then you're not being very American. Why not? Why not? Give me a reason, and that's the answer we should always ask. There's going to be another political party. And how is that a bad thing? Oh, because it's going to take away power from conservatives and Republicans. Then Republicans and conservatives aren't there doing their job. If someone else has got a party that's very similar to the ideals of the Republican Party or the conservatives and the Conservative Party, and they are doing it better, then those parties have failed and they need to improve, and maybe a little competition helps them along the way. Jesse mentions they have used Trump for the past 4 years to gain trust in everything the media and the left says and does, to the point where people don't even question anything they do. Again, if you disagree with them, you're racist and blah, blah, blah. The only people that divide this nation was the left, but they can't even see that. It's very sad. Well, this is a problem that's been going on, I believe, for a lot longer than just the last 4 years. In fact, we've been doing this program for over a decade. We've done writing. We have a written portion that we've been doing for the last 15 years on political commentary. And the problem is that we've been seeing for decades now that people have been trained more and more to read a headline, and that's the answer. That's all the information you need. I mean, that is what Twitter is. Twitter is headlines. That's all it is. It's a bunch of headlines with no context, no information, no details. It's just a headline. It's emotional politics. And we have had a generation grow up thinking that's the way you deal with media. We've watched news segments on our national news programs, whether it's national, actually even in the local, where all the news of the day, every issue is shrunk down to about 30 seconds to a minute and a half. That's it. I have literally seen in the local news media, one of my local news stations, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, no matter where you are in the United States and probably around the world, I can't say for sure, but I literally saw them discuss an event, and a very big event. It was back when Devin Nunes, the then House head chairman of the Intelligence Committee for the House, came to Binghamton, was speaking with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, then Congresswoman, and again, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. They had a 4-hour event. There were protesters in front of the event for 4.5 hours. And that entire event, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee was in a small town of some 40,000 people, which is a pretty big deal. And I watched a news station report on that. It took 27 seconds. 27 seconds. No video, no people on the street. He just said, oh yeah, and there was the House Speaker, the House Intelligence... I can't even speak right. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee was in Binghamton speaking with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney and some supporters. There were protesters outside. He was done. That's the news. A 4-hour event. We have trained the American people to not ask questions and not to seek details. And that's one of the biggest problems. And that's why I believe we see Biden getting away with the stupidity that he's doing right now. And I will say, creating 11 to 80,000 people instantly being out of work on your first day. Having the state of New Mexico mention that you have just destroyed their economy. Distancing the United States from one of our closest allies in Canada, doing all of that within 6 hours of taking the presidency. Yeah, I think that's a problem. And I think that is something we need to really have the news media talk about and go, what are you doing? Why are you doing this, man? That's the wrap, everyone. Oh, I'm not done yet. to fit the narrative of the left. This doesn't even fit the narrative of the left. This is so confused and so horrendous, it's upsetting. This is very upsetting because I'm going to skip. There was a couple things I want to mention. But earlier this week, you may have noticed it on the channel, we were talking about, oh, wow, I love this. I'm talking about the job that Biden is doing and the problem with Biden. And they want to talk about, and I see that YouTube is labeling this as a U.S. elections issue. Why? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, going beyond that. So the question that I was asking is, we're watching him do things that are absolutely abhorrent to the United States. It is causing us a problem. One of the things you're not hearing from news media, Joe Biden has increased the number of troops in Syria, U.S. troops. He increased the number of troops on his second day in office. We actually increased our number of troops by somewhere around 30%. Why? Did Joe Biden get on any news station? Did he do any interview and say, hey, I don't like Assad in Syria. I don't like the civil war they're having. We have troops there. We're going to have more troops. We're going to get involved. This is a conflict from the Obama era that in fact, the officials working that Biden has put in place to handle international policy, Antony Blinken, who is a holdover from the Obama administration, who has admitted that the United States, that the Obama policy in the Middle East was a complete failure. He said that on May 2020 on CBS. It is a failure. And now we have Joe Biden putting that same person who was in charge of that failure, putting him back in charge, and we're doing the exact same thing we did when Obama was in. The very same things that failed. Why is the news media not talking about this? I don't know. Everyone who's watching this, tell me, did you hear about that before? Before me speaking about that, has anyone seen that in the news media? Have we heard anyone talking about the fact that we are increasing our troops and going back to an Obama era in Middle East policy that was more, that it had more U.S. troops involved, it was more violent, there was less peace in the world? Has anyone, and I'm opposing that idea versus President Trump is nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes because he got 4 nations to recognize Israel and to start on a path to peace with Israel, which net improves the global peace and takes one of the worst hotbeds of the world and makes it that much calmer. And now, within 48 hours, we've seen Joe Biden decide, oh, we're going to put more troops into Syria, which instantly makes Turkey, Iran, Russia all more active in the Middle East. Instantly. Let me catch up. Can't make this up. It's sickening. Yes, it is. And what about China sending military aircraft into Taiwan? I'm about to get to that. And Jesse's mentioned that he was called the conspiracy theorist. You know what? We're all being called conspiracy theorists, but I am showing you the links. This is international news. You know what? When I'm talking about this is coming from individuals like, this is coming from foreignpolicy.com. This is a credible, world-renowned institution. Okay, and they're talking about the fact that Iraq has completely disappeared from the Biden agenda, that they're not talking about one of the cornerstones of Middle East policy for the United States for over a decade. In fact, quote, third, Washington must counter Iran's expansionist agenda in the region by helping Iraq regain its sovereignty and limiting foreign intervention in the country. Ensuring Iraq is firmly on a path to becoming a more neutral and influential actor in the region would benefit U.S. interests and bring more stability in the region. Oddly, Iraq is barely even mentioned in Washington, even as there is a near consensus that Iran will be among the top foreign policy issues that the Biden administration will tackle early on. Okay, that's not me saying that. That's not a conspiracy. That is a credible news agency talking about international policy. Biden has no plan what to do with Iraq. Meanwhile, Iran, the very people he wants to do a nuclear peace deal with, the very people that he wants to give money to who are funding global terror, they are very interested in Iraq. They have a vested interest in Iraq. They want to grow their influence and power in Iraq. But Biden's just going to ignore it. And you know what, folks? If I can realize that, if little old me and you can have this discussion and say, oh my God, there's a problem with the Middle East policy, basically that it doesn't exist, and that we have no means of moving forward and we're doing this badly, if we can figure this out, guess what? So did Iran. So did China. So did everyone else in the world. And if you wonder why, like Ron had brought up and is an absolute fact, international media have been talking about this, have been reporting that China has been sending military aircraft over Taiwan as a test of Joe Biden to see, what are you going to really do, Joe? What are you going to do about the fact that we want Taiwan? That they are flexing their military. And as China is doing that, North Korea is watching, Iran is watching, all Cuba and Venezuela and Russia are watching to see what the reaction is so that they can take their shot at Joe Biden. And what are we seeing? Complete failure. Complete missteps. Where is Joe Biden? He can't hide in a basement anymore. He wants to say he's president. You can't just sign documents and say, hey, that's it, I'm done. He needs to speak, and he needs to speak about these dramatic changes. If there's anything that I am concerned about today is the changes that are happening and the lack of information and context for the American people. If he thinks these are the best things for America, he needs to explain why. If you are adding 30% more troops in Syria, you need to explain to the American people why you have just put that many more American troops in harm's way, in an active war zone, in a country that's having a civil war that has nothing to do with America. Besides the fact that Joe Biden doesn't like their leader, and he wants it, this is part of the Obama policy. And if I'm wrong about that, if this isn't the case, then Joe Biden needs to explain why, which he has failed to do. I have to believe that I am correct when he is not willing to say anything about this. When he is not willing to address that we have to deal with Iraq and we need stability there, and he's not willing to talk about that, but Iran is sure concerned about it. Is that a message? Is he sending a back channel message to Iran? Go ahead and take over Iraq. America won't say anything. We're just going to let it happen. Let Iran grow its power directly. That would be unfortunate. I mean, and again, folks, this is what I'm seeing from the information that is available to me, that I am seeing in the news, because I'm reading the international news. I'm looking for information in the U.S. news, and it's not there. And I'm putting the pieces together. You may think I'm wrong. It's not the question of the credibility of the sources. You may question my conclusions, and that's perfectly fine. But tell me that my reasoning is wrong. Tell me I'm not putting this together. Please let me hear that argument. I would love to hear someone from the left to do that. Ron mentions, unfortunately, as seen in the past, Jill Biden is in charge. She will be taking the lead. Jesse mentions that Biden has no respect for our military. He has proven that over and over again. Well, to address that on both of your parts, there is, of course, the fact that we saw that there are 5,000 National Guard troops, at least, that will be staying in Washington, D.C. until at least mid-March. And you know who was the one who was down there? Jill Biden, as our troops were sitting in a parking lot, thrown out, put into a parking lot. Now, Jill Biden comes out and gives them a bunch of cookies. And I have to say to myself, when I'm looking at that, why are we giving our troops cookies? What's the point? Who cares? They're sitting in the middle of the winter in Washington, D.C. They're sitting in a parking garage. Why? Well, how about a bigger question? How about the bigger question? Why is our National Guard still in Washington, D.C.? We had 25,000 National Guard in addition to at least, and I can easily give you the numbers here, there's over 3,000 Capitol Police. There are over 2,300 Washington, D.C. City Police. There are 22 additional agencies of some varying level of law enforcement with agents and troops in Washington, D.C. right this second. If every single one of them only had another 100, that's another 2,000. So we're talking about over 30,000 law enforcement agents and military troops are in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration, with barbed wire and fencing that's been up. Why? Without there being any credible threat to anyone in Washington, D.C. Without any credible threats, why do we have that? Here's another question. We had that. Why do we have that going forward until March? Why do we need to keep that number of troops actively on the streets in an American city? Think about it. You're going to have, again, there's 3,000 Capitol Police, actually over, it's 3,800, and there's 2,300 Washington, D.C. police. That's 5,000 law enforcement agents. And on top of that, we're going to have 5,000 to 7,000 of these troops. You're talking about a force of 10,000 to 12,000 people with some level of barricades and restrictions on the American people to travel in and around their capital. And you mean to tell me that that has no impact on the mindset of every single one of the officials who are having to pass through all these armed guards, all these checkpoints to go and pass laws and maybe possibly question the president? That has no impact on them whatsoever? It's called intimidation. It's called fear. And it's a wonderful tool used most notably by dictatorships. And that's how they rule, by having the troops constantly out in massive force, surrounding the people, heavily armed with the full weight and power of their governments. It's meant to keep people passive. And if I'm wrong on that, I would love to hear Joe Biden step up and explain why I'm wrong. Why, when there is no credible real threat, especially no credible real threat of a foreign government's army coming into Washington, D.C., why do we need 10,000 to 12,000 law enforcement agents and troops to encircle our capital, separating the people from our government, which was the inauguration? They had 200,000 flags. You know why they had 200,000 flags? Because they didn't even have 200 American citizens standing there watching the president go through the inauguration. That is troubling, in my point of view. Yeah, and then once they were done, once this was done, the troops are thrown into a garage. You know, get out in the cold. Just sit in the garage, because we don't care. No wonder Texas and Florida took back their troops. There's no reason for them to be there, and when they're getting disrespected, take them back. I don't know why we're going to have anyone leaving their troops there. For what reason? Besides to impress fear and intimidation on the American people and separating the American people from the political leadership and saying you can't talk to them, you can't interact with them, you are distant from them, and we have troops to make sure you stay in your place, because psychologically that is the exact message they are sending out. Whether it's intentional or not has nothing to do with it. That's what they're doing. And if you want me to give you a reason why I think Biden is worse off and leading the country in a worse place than what I saw with Trump, I never once saw Trump, who is surrounded by 15,000 people at a time, 2 to 3 times a week for the majority of 4 years, and and he was hated. There's no question. There's no Trump disorder going on. He was actively hated by the left every day in every form of media, and it was approved of by elected officials like Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters, actively saying, go after those Republicans, attack them. They literally said these things, and we had no separation between our government and the people, and now we do. And you know what? That is a psychological, and that is a demonstrative, don't have control. You don't even have the right to be involved, and that troubles me deeply. Trump did offer the troops, Jesse mentions that Trump offered the troops a hotel. That is correct. Never back down. I don't want anyone to incite violence, and I'm not inciting violence. And I want to be very clear, since I've said that, since I've said all of this, I want to be very clear. Because on this channel, we have said, and I will say it again, we reject and denounce and are opposed to any person or organization that uses fear, intimidation, violence, or the threat of violence to cause others to submit against their will. I don't care if that's coming from the left or the right. It doesn't matter. If anyone is using those tactics, fear, intimidation, violence, and the threat of violence, they are wrong and they need to be opposed. I've said that about BLM, Antifa, many on the left, like the Democratic Socialists of Ithaca. And I will say that about those who broke into the Capitol. It applies to them just as much. I don't care which organization it is. But I'm not going to let people stand up and say, oh, well, because someone did it, because this group on the right did something, and by the way, there were people on the left involved in that too, in the DC riot, but because we're talking about people on the right, we're now going to go and oppose the American people. We're going to use fear, intimidation tactics against the American public. No. I do not stand for that. I do not agree with that. I do oppose that, because that is opposed to all the principles of America, whether you're on the left or the right. That opposes America. If you think I'm wrong, I'd love to hear how. Please tell me why. If there's someone on the left who is watching and you're saying, oh, Mike, you don't get it. If you're on the right, if you're a conservative or a libertarian, you're watching this saying, oh, well, Mike, you just don't get it. Please tell me. I want to understand. Maybe I've misunderstood, but I don't believe I have. And I think I'm laying out the case of why I don't misunderstand it. And I'm trying to make sure I'm laying it out pretty clear. If I'm not, if I'm confused, or if I'm missing something, please tell me. Because I'll be happy to explain why I believe this, but I believe it very strongly. Jesse mentions the left is allowed to incite violence, but no one else. Cities burned. Yeah, we watched an entire summer of Antifa and BLM. Let's see, Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, Austin, Colorado, New York City, Rochester, Indianapolis, Kentucky. Well, no, not Kentucky. Louisiana. No, Louisville, Kentucky. And that's off the top of my head. That's 14 cities I can name off the top of my head that were hotbeds of violence. Oh, I left out Atlanta. That was another big one. 15 that I can name off the top of my head that had major riots, had properties being burned down. In some cases, American citizens were being captured as people were treasonously saying that they had separated from the United States government and opposed our laws and the people and law enforcement. And we were told that's peaceful. But that did not result in the American people being denied the ability to go into Congress, to watch Congress speak, to be able to be walking around our nation's capital, and to be able to approach our president in a public setting. Even as we had absolute riots, and what was it, 36 people were killed directly because of Antifa. How many times did we see a gentleman, someone on their knees as a member of Antifa ran up from behind them and kicked them in their heads? Curb stomp people, beating them to death. How many times did we see that? And not once did we see that the president of the United States, who was hated, who was the target of those violent criminals, never once did we see him decide, well, we're going to go and get 10,000, 25,000 troops and block off the American people from our nation's capital and our elected leaders. Which means I believe that Biden has made a statement, and it is a troubling one. Wheels mentions, I forgot I was on that screen. Wheels mentions the new bill Adam Schiff is imposing have the far left crying no. They are admitting white supremacy is hyped up and it will hurt black and brown people. There's a lot of bills that are coming out right now, and all these bills, I will show you exactly what I mean, because it's not just the one bill I showed you. I know I showed you H.R. 134, and I'll bring that up again. So I showed you this bill, which was introduced on January 4th, and there is not a single word about what it does. There is no text on this. Okay, so we're going to H.R. 127, another bill that I am watching, which is a ban on the Second Amendment. It basically is trying to remove the Second Amendment, in my understanding, again, from Representative Jackson Lee. And there is, again, go to the text. You're watching me do this live, folks. Not a single word. It's 20 days later. It was introduced into Congress. This is something that the American people is supposed to be evaluating, and we're either supposed to be telling our members of Congress, which the New York 22 doesn't have, our members of Congress to decide whether or not we want this for America, whether or not we believe this is the right thing, whether or not we should be destroying the Second Amendment or not. This is a conversation that is vital to the cornerstone of the American public, and there isn't a single word telling me what it means. I'm left to guess. And I'm guessing, and based on its title, I am guessing that this is the most anti-Second Amendment bill that I've seen in quite some time. And I can't tell you whether I'm right or wrong because I don't know what it is. But it's in Congress and it's being discussed at a committee. I know that for a fact because it's been submitted to the House Judiciary, which means at any moment, literally at any moment, we could wake up in the morning and it could pass the House, which is a Democratic-controlled House, and it could pass the Senate, which is a Democratic Senate, and it could be signed by Biden, all of them leaning more and more left. It could be done in a night, and you could wake up tomorrow, and this could be the law, and that would make you a criminal, I presume, based on its title, because you don't comply with it. And that could all happen, and you would never know what's said, because there's not a single word being provided to the American people. There is a problem. You want to hear something? President, you want to be president? Fantastic. How about you talk to your members, your co-members of your party, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and say, how about you get the writing down so the American people can read what it is you're trying to do? And maybe give us a little bit of time to be able to read through the unquestionably hundreds of pages, if not thousands of pages, that you're going to word this in so that they can read this through and actually understand what it is you're trying to do and tell you whether they want you to do it or not, because they're your bosses. We are their bosses. We are the public. And the public is in charge of America, not Chuck Schumer, not Nancy Pelosi, not even Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It is we, the people. We are in charge. They need to give us the bill and let us respond to it. Not, oh, here's the bill after we passed it or as we are voting on it, and we have no idea what's in it. Am I wrong? Is this crazy? Does this make sense? Because you have every right. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you can all respond to me. As long as, the internet overlords are allowing this to go out, please let me know what you think here. Tell me if you think I'm wrong on this, because I'm looking at the same information you are, maybe a little bit more, and I'm seeing insanity here. Absolute insanity. And the more we allow them to do this, the worse it gets. If we allow them to go 20 days without providing us any documentation, and then they want to start taking votes on some of this stuff, it's our fault. We have to stop them. We have to tell them, no, you can't do that. You can't vote on this. You can't pass these bills. And more importantly, someone has to go over to Biden and say, you can't pass everything that's affecting all of America and the globe. The globe, literally, he's passing laws that are affecting the globe, and he hasn't told anyone anything about it until he signs the bill and says, hey, look what I just did. That's not how it works in America. It may be how it works in Venezuela and North Korea and in China and to an extent in Russia. Yeah, it works in those countries, but America's supposed to be better than that. I mean, that's what I grew up with for 53 years of my life almost. Yeah, that's what America, we're not supposed to be like them. We're supposed to be better. We're supposed to be the example in the world to tell them that that's not the way you do it. That you talk with the people and the people say, yes, we want this, or no, we don't want this. And that's how we stay peaceful. And we don't have to agree, but we stay peaceful and we move forward. Am I missing something here? Am I wrong about this? Here's one of the problems with and when I say there's problems, there are consequences to all the things that they are doing. So here's one of the consequences. In talking about, and this is from The Guardian, notice I have to go to overseas to see any real news about the American, what's going on in America. But one of the things is we had Senator Cornyn who said, quote, if it's a good idea to impeach and try former presidents, what about former Democratic presidents when Republicans get the majority in 2022? Quote, think about it, and let's do what's best for our country, end quote. Because here's the real question, and he's right. If we are able to, after the fact, go back and try a president impeach them after they've left office, after they have no control of politics, we can go back and do that. Who can't we do that to? Can we do it to, how about Clinton, Bill Clinton? Let's impeach Bill Clinton. We know for a fact that he lied. We know for the fact that his character is absolutely abysmal. We know that he is lecherous. Whether criminally so or not is a question you can ask, but more than enough to be able to impeach him. We've all been able to see the documentation, and it's gone out to the American people. It's been analyzed over and over again. Let's impeach Bill Clinton. Why not? Can you give me a reason why I can't? Let's think about it. How about we impeach Carter? Carter, he screwed up the entire Iran hostages. This is before most of the people who are watching this were born. But, 400 Americans were taken hostage in Iran as the Ayatollah Khomeini took over. He screwed up saving their lives, so being able to go and get them back. He failed economically with stagflation. Again, something that people don't, unless you're my age, you don't know what that was. He was a complete failure, and he's been considered one of the worst presidents ever. Not just in the century, ever. Let's impeach him too. Why not? Can you tell me why I can't impeach them? And would that be okay? Would Democrats be all right with that? Does that mean we can go through all of history and impeach every Democrat that we disagreed with? And they're going to try and impeach every Republican that we disagreed with. And that serves what purpose for who, where? How does that make it better for anyone? I mean, you can disagree with me. You can tell me, Mike, you don't understand. But I think I do. Because this isn't rocket science. I know a lot of the news media and a lot of people, a lot of operatives for the various political parties want to say that when someone is on the opposite side, well, you just don't understand. Yes, we do. This is English. This isn't even high English. This is basic common speaking English. These things are not hard to understand. I understand the words that they are saying. You understand the words they are saying. And we can figure out 1 + 1 = 2. It's not racist. It's math. It's simple. It's deductive reasoning. And we can say that if we increase troops in Syria by 30%, that's not going to be a good thing. We're adding more people in a hot zone, endangering their lives in a foreign country on a fight that has nothing to do with our country. And increasing the international tensions because Iran, Turkey, Russia are also in there because we're in there. And it makes everyone more excited and more people have a potential to die. This isn't rocket science. This is pretty rudimentary. So when they say, oh, you're a conspiracy, where's the conspiracy? Please show me the conspiracy. Tell me how I am wrong. Here are the facts. We're presenting the facts. Tell me how this doesn't add up this way. Tell me, when we add more troops into a foreign country that is in a civil war in their country, please tell me how that makes you safer. I really want to hear that conversation. No one on the left will have it. No one on the left will discuss that. They will not explain how that makes you safer. Because crossing the street tomorrow, I don't think the Syrian National Guard is coming over to America to try and run over an American citizen because we're involved in their civil war. It doesn't work that way. That ain't how it happens. People should be scared for their freedoms, says Jesse, and I agree. I agree. We should be very scared. These are important things. And again, you don't have to agree with what I'm thinking about this, but we do have to understand what this is. I mean, I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about. So we know that right now, Andrew Cuomo has he's done a complete 180 and turned around and said, we have to open up New York State businesses. Otherwise, the economy is going to fall apart. We've heard from Mayor Littlefoot in Chicago saying the same thing. The mayor of Washington, D.C. has said the same thing. We are watching cities and states suddenly say that we have to open up our businesses because if we don't, the economy is going to completely collapse. At the same time, we have Joe Biden saying, well, we have to all wear masks for 100 days. This is a mandate. It's a requirement. You don't get a choice. Outside, inside, if it's on federal property, you have to do it, and every state should do that too. Removing your right to freedom, denying you your religious beliefs, it doesn't matter. You don't have a choice. How do these two things combine? How do we look at this and say, what's going on? And we have to understand that there is the COVID vaccine that is out there. And only about 5% of the nation has actually gotten the vaccine, at least one shot. And about 0.8% of those people have received both doses. So almost no one has gotten this. And 52% of all of the vaccine that has been created has not been distributed. So when you look at this and you're saying, okay, so half of all the vaccine, no one isn't even going anywhere. Almost no one has actually gotten 2 doses, and literally 5% of the nation have even bothered to get 1 dose of this. And if you were to take out all of the people who have been told that they are mandated to do it, like the healthcare workers and first responders, if you take them out, I would tell you that it'd probably be about 1% of the nation has volunteered to do this. So that tells me, and it should tell most of our elected officials, like Andrew Cuomo, that the public are done with COVID. We understand it's deadly. We understand it's a really bad flu or whatever you want to call it, and that this is a reality of the world, and we're wearing the mask and we're being safe, and we've been doing that for a year, and it's not going to stop because it hasn't stopped. And so at the end of 100 days, what I believe is going to happen is you're going to see Biden taking a victory lap, saying, you know what, Americans, whether we did or did not, he's going to come out and he's going to say, Americans wore the mask for 100 days. Here it is. We're now into May. We've done so well. COVID is beaten. Let's reopen. We're going to cautiously reopen all of America's businesses and get back to normal. And he's going to be heralded as a hero. And New York and all the rest of them are going to follow behind him. And he's going to get a nice boost in his news media coverage. And he's going to be the hero who saved America from COVID, even though absolutely nothing will have changed. Now, do you think I'm right? Maybe not. Maybe I got it wrong. But I can tell you this. America doesn't believe that the vaccine's saving us, and they don't think the masks are saving us. All they do know for sure is that they have been told for a year, that you should be absolutely terrified and you're going to die because it's like the Black Plague. That's the only thing we know for sure. And we know that in Britain, there is a mutation that somehow, without being transferred by any human beings, exists in the United States now too, and it's supposed to be deadlier and more contagious. That's what we know. In other words, be terrified, be afraid, but don't worry. We're going to open up the businesses. Even though you're terrified, you're afraid, it's more deadly and it's more contagious than ever before, and we're going to open up all the stores, and Joe Biden is a hero. What is going on? I mean, that's literally what's happening. We're being told in Britain and in Europe, it's deadlier, it's more contagious, it's round 2. We're told that the vaccine, which is unproven, probably doesn't work against it. And at the same time, we're being told that, and we're told, well, you're going to wear a mask for the next 100 days so that it will stop this, which we've been wearing masks for the last 12 months, and it hasn't stopped it. And then in 100 days, he's going to come back and say, oh, well, it's over. Really? And we're supposed to believe that. I don't know. Maybe it's me. And again, the thing is that it's not one thing. I wish that it were just one thing. That we could say, you know, this is international policy that makes no sense. This is national policy, domestic policy that makes no sense. This is applications on our social lives that makes no sense. If it were any one of those things, you know what, America can survive, and we've survived good presidents, bad presidents. We've had good and bad economies. We can survive all of that. But we have a combination of a bad economy, a really bad president, doing some really bad things, and destroying our nation all at the same time. And I am concerned. And I'm trying to highlight for you, here's all the different levels that this is concerning. Because that's what political commentary is supposed to do. Here's the problem. Here's the true scope of the problem. Here's all the rhetoric removed. Here's what's left. And for that, we are called conspiracy theorists. We're called Trumpers and Trumpists, which I don't know what that has anything to do with, but am I right? Here are the facts. You know, when I'm showing you and we're seeing that troops are going into Syria, which is a fact. When troops have gone into Syria, you can call me a Trumpist all you want. It doesn't change the fact that 30% of we have increased the number of troops in Syria by 30%. That is a fact. Whether or not I have a political belief one way or the other, whether you do, doesn't change the fact that 30% more troops are in Syria. And that is making tensions in the Middle East higher, which may lead to more violence in the Middle East, which means the world is going to have a problem. These are facts and direct consequences. And it doesn't matter what political beliefs I have. It doesn't matter who I want to have as president. That's the reality we have right now. What are we going to do about it? I don't know. Now, again, you can call in 607-242-1582. I'm not expecting everyone to type. If it's too much to type, just call in and tell me, Mike, you got it wrong. Or you think I got it right. Or you think I missed something, right or wrong. I'm perfectly happy to hear whatever it is you have to say to find out what you think. As I am from people, and we're listening to people in Facebook and YouTube. I believe Twitter is still broadcasting it, but Twitter's back and forth on that, so I can never trust them. Let us know. Wow, we've done an hour and 15 minutes already. Time flies, folks. I don't know. Well, I can't say that. I do know that I am troubled and I am concerned. And I'm trying to highlight the things that I'm seeing out there because we're seeing a lot of failures of our government without anyone being questioned. And I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about and how this is having a very negative impact on the United States. Oh, wait a minute. Thank you. This is one of the best questions I've ever been getting. Jesse asks, do you think you're unbiased? I was just told you aren't. Well, no, let me answer it. I know better than anyone else. Am I biased or not? Of course I'm biased. I am a conservative Republican, and my political commentary comes from a political viewpoint that is Republican and conservative. I'm also an American. My viewpoint is America-centric. Even when I'm talking about international policy, it's America-centric. I am biased. Is there anything wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that at all. Why? Because I am more than willing, and I say it all the time. This is my point of view. Now, does that mean everything I say is invalid because someone is a member of Antifa or BLM or they're a Democrat or a progressive, which are not the same thing, or you're from another country like Great Britain or in Peru or in Canada? No. Just because I have a preference, I believe that every American should be able to have a firearm within reason. The deranged and those who have proven deadly to others, no, I don't think they should. I believe that there should be freedom of speech unless you are trying to incite violence or cause harm to others. Now, does that mean that I am biased against those who disagree with me? Probably. Does it mean I'm wrong? No. Doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean I'm wrong. That's why we have conversations. That's why, and I understand that we are all human beings. None of us are 100% correct on anything, ever. But if you have enough of us talking and discussing an issue and trying to find an answer, and if we're willing to bend a little bit, and meet in the middle, generally we have the best answer possible. But that's not what's happening in America today. We hear people say, well, I'm on the left. I am a progressive, so I can't listen to you. I can listen to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but I can't hear anyone else. Well, then you're not hearing anything then. If you're hearing only the same things that you're being told, then you don't know what's going on. When Joe Biden says that he's got this brilliant plan, he's going to open the border of America, which endangers America. That is a security risk to America. And if he says, well, and if you disagree with me, you're a racist, I'm sorry, you don't understand, one, the definition of racism, and two, you aren't that good. Nobody is. If you're telling me that, no, if you can guarantee me, if I would love to hear Biden say, and I guarantee that not one criminal, not one person who will cause a problem will come across the southern border now that we've opened it up, I would love to hear. He will never say that because it would be a lie. To have an open border, there's a reason why no country has open borders. All countries have rules. There are restrictions. Besides just the question of who's coming across the border, it's the number, how many people are coming across the border. There's logistics here. How do you feed those people? Where do you house those people? How do you integrate those people if they want to be integrated? How do you get them employed? How do you make them useful and beneficial to the country? There's a lot of reasons why you can be against this, and you can have a problem with having an open border, but Biden seems to not care. He's just going to open the border. Because if he did, because anyone who disagrees with him is a racist. I just gave you several factual, functional things that have nothing to do with politics that are a problem. My discussion, when we're talking about Syria, my bias has nothing to do with we increased the number of troops, and that's a problem. John Taylor mentions opening the border is like legalizing human trafficking. It is legalizing human trafficking. In fact, I talked about that in the video I did earlier in the week. And it's not only it increases the sexual assaults, sex trafficking, human trafficking. It increases the amount of drugs being brought across the border. It has a host of problems. There is a reason why we have a border, and it's not because the people are brown or bronze. It's because of what's happening at the border. And I say the same thing, and I have the same opinion in Canada. And I have written articles about this, and I've spoken about this many times. And I think we should close the Canadian border too, or actually make it realistically closed, because there are huge hundreds and hundreds of miles of Canadian border that is just a bunch of woods and anyone can walk across. That is a fact. Everyone knows it. We have people coming across into America through that border all the time. And that's a problem. And I have just as much of a problem with the northern border as I do the southern border. The reason you don't hear people talking about the northern border is because it is not politically advantageous. Because no one's going to get emotionally upset when I mention the northern border, because people tend to be just as light-skinned as anyone in America, and they speak French. And the news media can't hype that up. It doesn't create division the same way it does that, oh my God, those people don't look like these people, so that must be a problem, and you should be upset about it. Rather than, I don't like what happens when some people, I don't care from where, cross our borders illegally. If they're willing to commit one crime, which is to enter our nation illegally, then why do I believe they're not going to be willing to commit another crime? And if we have leadership that says, well, breaking this law isn't a crime, why do I think any other law is going to be breaking any other law is a crime? I mean, that's one of my biggest problems with this whole open borders thing, and the fact that he shut down ICE. Did you hear that, folks? He literally released every detainee in the United States. Everyone that ICE was holding on to, he let them go. It's not just, oh, don't pursue any other people, which is a problem because they've committed a crime, and he's saying, well, we're not going to follow up. That crime is okay. It's okay for them to commit that crime, which makes me wonder, what crime is it okay for anyone who illegally entered the United States? And if you're instantly thinking about, well, a bunch of Mexicans, you're not thinking about, one, the true scope of this, and you've watched CNN too much. There are Germans who came into America illegally. There are people from France who came into America illegally. There are people from every nation in the world. Literally, there are people from every nation in the world that entered the United States illegally last year. And some of them are breaking the law. And why is it we are telling them that it's okay to break the law? And we are releasing them. He let them go. Again, my problem is, if he thinks that's the best thing for America, then he should be on TV, because they're going to obviously put him on TV, and speak on every one of the social news networks because they love him. They supported him in his election, and tell America why he thinks it's the best thing in the world to do this, even though there is a percentage of human trafficking, sex abuse, drugs, gangs, and other violent crimes that are going to happen because of that, and they are going to negatively impact American citizens. Please explain that to me. He won't, because he can't, because there is no justification for that. Because if there was a justification for that, they'd be telling us. Jesse mentions open border crisis in France, Germany, and Italy because they didn't have a plan for those people coming in. Do we want that? We're going to get that. Syrian refugees are coming into the United States because Joe Biden has opened the border, he is enacting laws to increase the amount of refugees that will come into America without documentation, without proof of who they are, so we have no idea of what their intentions are. They will come in. And we already know that Iran and Hezbollah and Al-Qaeda and ISIS have all said that they are inserting their agents of terror into these refugee groups so that they can go to these other countries, including the United States. And we're going to take them in without question and allow them, whether they come in legally or illegally, and we're going to let them come into the country under Joe Biden because he has made that the rule, without asking you why he's doing it, without asking you if he can do this, and without telling you why we should do this. Maybe he has the perfect answer and it's beautiful and explains it all. If he does, he's the only one who knows about it because he hasn't said a word to anyone. And there's a problem. That's where my problem comes from. That's where my problem keeps coming back to. Mavis mentions the only crime that the Democrats think is punishable is being conservative. And over again, they have proven that that's the case, that that's what they believe. They are more concerned about trying to shut my voice down and to shut down the voice of other conservatives. As I said, it was being reported earlier today, Epoch Times, over 78,000. In fact, I think the numbers are very, very small because we've seen evidence of over 1 million people have been removed from social media, from Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We have warnings coming out from YouTube and from Facebook saying that if you said certain things, if you've talked about certain topics in a manner that is not progressive, that they will remove that content and or remove that person and eliminate them. That we have heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others say that they want to detain American citizens and they want to deprogram American citizens. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others have said that they want to reprogram American citizens because they don't like the way they think. Yeah, we have problems going on. And I have yet to hear a word from Joe Biden saying, no, you can't do that. I have yet to hear a word from Kamala Harris say, no, there's a First Amendment. You can't do that. And we should be worried about that. A lot. We should be concerned, and we should be fighting that, I believe. Jesse mentions 1.9 million people on the Facebook group, Joe Biden is not my president, and it was erased. See, there's a problem. I don't care that, you know what, I don't care that they think that Joe Biden is or is not their president. It doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is 1.9 million people had an opinion, and because a bunch of overlords at Facebook decided we don't like that opinion, we don't like that political opinion, and they erased it, that's a problem. That's why they're getting sued by Poland. That's why Poland is so angry with them, as well as Germany. And I want to go back to Angela Merkel, and that's the woman in the picture right here. Angela Merkel, she is the Chancellor of Germany. Basically, she's the president of Germany, for people who are not familiar with that. And she made a great statement that if you allow a organization like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google to go out there and censor a sitting president, which they did, without any reservation, without any kind of consequence, then they can silence anyone. Whether it's 1.9 million people who have a different political opinion or any world leader at any given time, that includes Joe Biden, which means that they can dictate the information people know or what people believe is true, and therefore they are manipulating people, which is absolutely against the First Amendment and absolutely against freedom. It invalidates life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How can I pursue happiness if what you're telling me is leading me down a path that will not make me happy, that will not give me the ability to be happy, will not allow me to be able to live a full and complete life? That doesn't mean I will, but it definitely means you're not going to even let me try. That is a problem. That is a fundamental problem. And world leaders and countries have seen that and said, you can't do this. Facebook, Twitter, they're in trouble, and they should be. But it's no less trouble than when we see progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they say people have to be reprogrammed because they don't think the way that they want them to think. That's just as deadly. That is the same mentality. That mentality from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others who thought that they should create a Trump accountability project, the Trump accountability project, which we've spoken about on this channel before. Lists of conservatives and Republicans and individuals who voted for Trump. These lists, people who have made these lists, they concern me because they're not concerned about the Constitution or someone's constitutional rights. They're concerned about power. And when people are consumed about power, they do things that are absolutely detrimental to the well-being of millions of lives. And we have seen that repeatedly throughout history. Take any time period, anywhere in the world, and you will always see that same result every single time. Yes, that's what it's called. John Taylor mentions, it's great she said that, but worrying that other world leaders didn't follow her example. Some did. Some did, but some of them were afraid. You know what? If I happen to be in Mozambique, if I happen to be in Peru, if I happen to be in, I don't know, name a country, the Ivory Coast, Ghana. I'm just thinking of countries off the top of my head. You know, Bosnia. If you're in one of those countries and you decide that you want to say something, and the progressive left, the democratic socialists of the world out there, the socialists out there, and they're upset, they'll cut your funding. Biden's busy just signing documents. I swear to God, they're just putting stuff in front of him. He's just signing away. I don't think he's reading what he's writing. And he's just signing away rights, and he's going to sign away their funding. He's going to take away the influence of America. What helps keep most of the countries in the world safe from other countries? The United States. England has virtually no navy like they used to have. We took away the British Navy because we have a navy that's around the world all the time, everywhere right now. And that has made the ability for other countries like China, which also has no real navy, they can ship their goods and they can trade internationally because the United States has that military. What happens, and we can go through that example over the air, we can talk about it on the ground. The United States has made it possible for other countries to live better lives because of capitalism. That is a fact. It's not even disputable. We can go through any set of numbers you want to, and I can prove that repeatedly. That's not a question. That's a fact. So what happens when the key component to increase trade and lifting up the poor in the world, when that key element suddenly has been turned off from you and you are isolated? That's a question that no country in the world wants to answer, so they're going to shut up. Because unless you happen to be like Germany, France, England, large countries that can actually, they're first, second world, they have relatively good relationships with America, and they have brass balls. They have leaders with brass balls who are willing to stand up and say, no. They can do it. But if you're one of the rest of the world, which would be roughly 100 out of the 104, there's 184 countries in the world. And out of that 184, there's about 35 that can do and say almost anything they want. And everybody else, another 154 of those nations, are just sitting back going, well, just be nice to me too. Because they can't do anything. They don't have enough power. They have the power for, taking care of their little spot as long as they don't intrude on the other 35 countries' plans. That's the reality. That's the reality of the world. So are they going to say anything about this? No. I don't expect most of the countries in the world will. Although, I believe it was Ghana. If I remember right, it was Ghana that did shut down Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. They shut down all the social media while they were having elections 2 weeks ago. So, much props for them. But can you see, my question to everyone out there is, in all the things that we're talking about, it keeps coming back to the same central point here. Where are we going? Where is Joe Biden taking the nation? And do you want to go there? This is a problem. This is a question. Because I have yet to speak to anyone, and I know a lot of politicians, and I know a lot of very politically aware individuals, far more politically aware than myself. I've been watching and listening to all the news and all of the pundits out there, not just myself, not just from the left, not just from conservatives. And I'm trying to find out. And no one seems to have a clear understanding of what Biden is doing. Even on the left, they don't really know where he's going. They have an idea. They are trying to push him in a direction, but no one is really clear about what's going on next. And no one has an idea. Let me ask a simple question. Does anyone know where America will be in 6 months? Do you have any idea of how much unemployment will be in America in the next 6 months? Do you have any idea how many people will be getting the vaccine for COVID-19? Do you have any idea whether or not guns will be legal in the next 6 months? And if so, which guns? Or if not, how are they going to get them? Do you have any idea about how long our borders are going to be open? Who's going to be allowed in? What's going to happen to the crime rate? Well, I haven't heard anyone tell us where we are. I've heard people from the election last year tell us it's all going to be great. I've heard people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer say, though, America's going to be in a better place. I've heard them say things like that. I've also heard these same people say that, like Nadler, say that, Antifa's a myth. And that's a lie. We've seen them lie to our faces on a regular basis. This was the most secure election ever, other than the fact that there were some irregularities in a bunch of places on a huge scale. But it was perfectly safe. I mean, I've heard a lot of lies. I've heard a lot of projections from last year, but I have yet to hear anyone tell me that, okay, Joe Biden's going to reduce the unemployment rate by X amount by X time. No one has said that. You wonder why. And part of that's because we have absolutely no confidence. I can tell you this as well, as we said earlier. It's because they have no confidence in him. They have no confidence in the Biden administration. If they had confidence in the Biden administration on any level, they wouldn't be trying to impeach President Trump. They wouldn't be worried about the 2024 election 4 days into a Biden administration. If I'm confident about what I'm doing, I'm not worried about what's going to happen 4 years from today. I'm worried about what's happening right now. And if I'm right, I don't care. Because in 4 years, I'll be just as right as I am right now. If they actually thought the unemployment rate, and this is the only thing I can come to, this is the only conclusion I can get. They're trying to get away with as much stuff as they possibly can, while at the same time, while we see that Republicans and conservatives are cowering. And overwhelmingly, the Republicans and the conservatives that are in Congress right now are overwhelmingly cowering in a corner, sitting back, afraid to say anything because, look, DC riot happened. And, ooh, that was so bad. Why? They didn't do it. They didn't have anything to do with it. If they did have something to do with it, then yeah, they should be afraid. But if they had nothing to do with it, they didn't promote it, which it seems no one really did. It was a spontaneous thing. And if there is no plan to try and take over the government, because there isn't one, and no one's seen one, no one's heard of one, it doesn't exist. It's a great talking point, great fear, wonderful intimidation, doesn't exist. So why not stand up? Ted Cruz believed in the Second Amendment before and after the fact. Why is he any more a good or bad guy? If you thought the Second Amendment's good, then it's good. So why are we going through this? I mean, does that make sense? Did I explain that well? Was that clear? Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm explaining it clearly. But John does say he would just bumble around signing anything put in front of him until Harris takes over. Her presidency is when things get scary. Scarier. I truly believe that. Because I believe she has proven to be a very extreme individual. And even Democrats, when she was running for, and this is the thing, I have a problem because even Democrats don't like Harris. And they may say, oh, well, she's black, because she's not. She herself said she's Indian and that she's not black. And she ran for several elections on the idea that she's an Indian, not black. So she's not black. Again, this is about how she's willing to change anything and everything. She's like Hillary on steroids. That she's willing to change any aspect of her life and her beliefs to do anything. She called Biden a racist and a sexist. She did that on national TV at a debate. And now she works for that guy, and she thinks he's a wonderful person. What happened to the racism and sexism that she thought? What about the fact that she thought he was a rapist? Did that suddenly go away? Because as far as I know, those charges from Tara Reid still exist. And she's just willing to absolve that because he's a great guy and I'm vice president. Well, that means that you're an opportunist and you're willing to turn on anyone and anything to achieve your personal goal. And that kind of person being in power is terrifying. And I believe that's the reason why when we had Democratic nominations, she never made it over 5%. That's of the Democrats. Democrats evaluating other Democrats never thought she could never get more than 5% of the Democrats to say that she was presidential or that she was qualified. They thought she was horrible. 95% of Democrats, sometimes, most of the time more, thought that she was terrifyingly bad and threw her out. And she's going to be the one that's going to get to be sitting in the big chair, signing the executive orders, avoiding Congress. Because, I mean, this is my big problem. I have problems with every president that signed executive orders. I've been after, I was after Trump about this. I was after Biden about this. I was over Obama about this. I've been over every president. I don't like executive orders. They are a workaround. They allow a president to do something that they know Congress would not allow them to do. This is their way to cheat. And they don't have to explain it to anyone. They just need to do it. And this is a problem. And can you imagine Kamala Harris, someone that 95% of Democrats voted against? They thought she was a bad choice. Imagine when she gets to get up there and she starts signing. Now, I've said before that I expected in the first 3 months that Joe Biden would 25th Amendment or some other means would no longer be president. And that this is a Harris administration waiting to happen. Now, Larry Sharp, who's a friend of mine, libertarian, smart man, he has a different opinion, and I give him full credit for this. He believes that Joe Biden, some way, shape, or form, they're going to string him along, and he's going to make it for 2 years. And then Kamala takes over. And the reason for that is that would mean that Kamala can go 2 years, run for president twice. That would give Democrats 10 years of Kamala Harris. That's why they want him to last for 2 years. I'm still on the fence. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me from a political standpoint, but I don't think that Joe Biden is mentally capable enough to make it 2 years as president. I have trouble believing he'll make it through 3 months, but we'll see. You know, I think somewhere between where I believe and where Larry Sharp believes is the truth. And we're going to see that man out, and she's going to be in, and it's going to be even worse. All right, folks, so we got about 15 more minutes. Let me ask you. I asked this before, and I'll ask it again. Where are we going to be in 6 months? It's a really big question. In 6 months, where will we be? Is anyone sure that we're going to be able to, I mean, we already know what some of the laws are that are coming up. I mean, consider this. We don't know if there's going to be a Second Amendment. Look at this bill, H.R. 127. We don't even know what it does. Hopefully within the next 6 months we will, but I have no way of knowing and guaranteeing that in 6 months that we will know what this is. And they want to take away our firearms. We know there's the assembly bills, in New York State, A416 that we've talked about, and A352, which we've talked about, which are absolutely devastating to the people. Absolutely infringements on our rights and our freedoms. Where are we going to be in 6 months? That's a big question. Where are we going to be in 6 months? Do you guys have any idea? Do you think it's going to be a good place? How about that? Let's just ask the question. Do you think we're going to be in a good place in 6 months? Does anyone feel optimistic about our economy, our nation, international policy, global wars, regional wars? Does anyone feel optimistic about where we're going to be? Anyone? And I take that as a no. And even if you're watching this after the fact, after the show has been live, you can still, I look forward to seeing your comments about this. Are you optimistic about what's going to happen in this nation in the 6 next months? Are you optimistic about what's going to be happening internationally? Are we going to have more international violence or not? I ask people, if you don't want, you don't have to say something live. If you want to say it after the show, fantastic. shoot me an email or, make the comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I'll be happy to look at that. I always pay attention. I want to hear what you think, because I think the overwhelming number of people, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, even the progressives, are going to agree that they're not sure where America is going to be, and probably it's going to be worse than it is now. That we're going to be in a worse place in 6 months. And I think if we kept going with that, I think most people would believe that in 4 years, we're going to be in a worse place than where we are right this second. This is the high point of, I believe, this is the high point of the Biden administration. And I don't hear a lot of comments from anyone in any medium saying that, oh, no, that's not true. That should terrify people. It should make us all very, very alarmed. And I think I got kicked off of Facebook, Twitter for a while because of that. But I do love taking the opportunity every Sunday to speak to you guys. And sometimes you notice that I mention certain specific countries like Germany, Great Britain, Peru, Canada. We have a lot of people who actually follow this in those countries. And I do appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone who is following what we do. We've had phenomenal growth in the program in the last year. And I thank you guys for allowing more free speech to take place, to be engaged in this. Mavis mentions the next Great Depression is on its way. They might be able to prolong, but it's coming. I agree. Well, we all understand, and I think we all believe, we are in a recession as we speak. We've been in a recession since they shut down the government and the country with COVID in 2020. That was it's one of the strangest things ever. We've never seen this happen before in the history of the world. We literally have an exact moment, an exact day that everyone can agree that started the recession of 2020. Now we're at a point where even if we start opening up every single business, the other policies that are being put forth are going to continue to reduce the population. They have no choice. They're going to try and buy people off and try and improve things by taking away the student loans. That's not going to affect it. They're going to try and give out more checks. This is not the last check you're going to get. I truly believe, Mavis, that there's going to be another 1,400. They got this 1,400. I tell you that there's be at least one or two more stimulus checks coming out before the end of the year, because they're not helping the system. Oh yeah, you can go out. You can go back out to work. Fantastic. What work? You just shut them all down. There's no funding. There's no loans that are available. Oh, well, don't worry. You can get another loan, but the banks are not going to give out money. They just lost money on every single student loan. They're going to not be giving out free money. They're going to hold the collateral they need people with collateral. They don't care if you want to start a new job. They got to make up for the fact that they just lost how many? $1 billion on student loans. What about the homeowners? We already are seeing that there are foreclosures that are starting to get higher. There are more, literally just in the last week, there were something like 30,000 more foreclosures in the United States than there were last week. We're going to start seeing a lot of homes, they're gone. We're going to see, and this is with a freeze on foreclosures. They're frozen right now. So imagine how bad the problem is if we saw 30,000 foreclosures happen while there's a freeze on foreclosures. How bad is it really in the economy? How many houses are going to suddenly be gone in the next 6 months? And we're increasing taxes on businesses. That's what Biden wants to do. We know that that's something that we're seeing Governor Cuomo has already promised. He's going to increase taxes. And of course, he says it's only going to be on the top incomes. They're the only ones who are going to get that. But we know Cuomo's a liar. And it's never just the top. And we know that Biden has lied about this. And he's also looking to increase taxes. And you know what? Let's say they actually, for the first time in our lifetimes, that they actually tell the truth and they only tax the top rates. That's the people who own all the businesses. They'll close the businesses. They're already closing businesses. They'll just close the businesses, which means more people are unemployed. How does that help anything? And that's not going to lift America up. I mean, I know Nancy Pelosi, who has said that unemployment checks are a stimulus. They help to improve the economy. It's one of the most stupid things that she's ever said because it's so absolutely fundamentally untrue. And she did say this. And they may think that, but that's not going to help the economy. That's going to create more people who are unemployment. That doesn't move the economy forward. So yeah, we are in a deep recession, and the things that I see him doing in a deep recession, increasing taxes, making it harder for businesses to operate, isolating people. I don't see any of this being something that's going to be a positive for business. I do not see us coming out of this recession anytime too soon. I just don't. I mean, if someone out there thinks I'm wrong, please tell me how this is going to help us. How is this going to make things better? We're going to raise we already know, raising the minimum wage will get rid of 3.5 million jobs. We know that for a fact. We know the minimum wage only affects approximately 3% of the entire nation. So that's roughly about 6 million people. So you're going to double the number of people who are going to be who are going to be unemployed. That's just ridiculous. I mean, that's the way I see it. I don't know. Well, I do know. I do know what I'm saying. I don't want it to be that way. I would like to be wrong. I would like to be so wrong. Hang on. Unemployment stimulus. I'm just trying to find the comment from Nancy Pelosi that unemployment is a stimulus, which is a few years ago, because it's just something that was so ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. Oh, but it seems that the internet overlords don't like me trying to do that. Okay. But we've got 3 more minutes. And so for the next 3 minutes, let me mention that I do appreciate and thank everyone who has, watched the program and who participated today. I love this. This is what free speech is about. This is what a conversation is about. This is how we improve America, by having conversations. Not necessarily that we all agree, but that we get to have this conversation, that we get to understand the issues that are affecting us, to see a different viewpoint, and then to go from there. And I hope that if you have seen the program and you enjoyed this, if you learned anything, if you are checking out some of the links that we are providing on this information for yourself, we hope that you like and share. And if you can, please subscribe. That helps us to reach even more people until the internet overlords kick us off. But it then lets us to reach more people to, again, expand this First Amendment right, to be able to hear more people's thoughts, to see different ideas, and to try and figure out what's the best thing for America, for us all. And that includes whether you're over in another country, because you know what? I'd love to hear, and I do enjoy when I hear from Great Britain, when I hear from Germany, when I hear from Peru and Canada and some of the other nations that we hear from about this program. It all matters. It all helps us understand. And you know what? If it's anything that can help bring about more world peace, to lessen the recession and prevent a Great Depression, I'm open to all ears to hear these things. Even if I don't necessarily agree with them, I want to hear them because maybe that inspires. And hopefully that's what we're able to do here today. And hopefully it helps us to make our elected officials who watch this program. There's a lot of elected officials on all parties that watch this program. And hopefully they're paying attention to this is the sentiment, not just from myself. I'm also hearing from other people. That helps to inform a lot of what we're talking about here. So we do hope for that. But I believe that as we speak, the internet overlords are preempting us, even though we're putting out about 300% of the signal that we need for you to hear us. But we've been here for 2 hours, and Wheel says, eagle's wings will be plucked from the lion. America is about to face some things. Prepare. I've been saying be prepared for a long time. But I don't think America's not done yet. America is not done yet. I do not believe that. We're just in for a really, really difficult period. A lot of problems. But I think we can work through them if we stop just simply accepting everything without question. We can challenge our elected officials. We need to challenge our elected officials. We absolutely must have term limits. We must.